Hey everyone, a friend of mine recently dumped an Amazon Prime Video account on me, but I don't know what to do with it, because you know me, if it doesn't start with Ultra and end with Man, I ain't watching it. Scrolling through this, there's nothing that really appeals to me. Maybe I should... Whoa. Ultraman Orb, The Origin Saga is a 12-episode Amazon Prime exclusive that came out in 2016. It serves as a prequel to the Ultraman Orb series proper, and tells the story of the first chapter of Orb's chronicle. I haven't watched Ultraman Orb yet, so I don't know if I should be watching this one. I've got better things to do. Yeah, better things. But then again, that's what prequels are for, right? So it does make sense to watch this before Ultraman Orb. I still don't know how to juggle. I went into this series without any knowledge of Orb's cast whatsoever, except Juggler, since I've seen him in Ultraman Z. I also know that some Heisei Ultras are in here, so hey, looking forward to that too. Of course, big spoiler alert for this whole season, get out of here if you want the fresh experience. Without further ado, let's start scaling the warrior's peak. The story starts out showing Guy and Juggler climbing the warrior's peak to get the power Juggler says so many people were dying to get their hands on. Juggler doesn't get it, but Guy does. Juggler becomes quite jealous, and the Voice of Light gives them their first mission. The part about Guy's first mission is important here. He's a very new Ultra being and has no idea what's coming his way. We, the viewers, then see the first time Guy becomes Orb as he faces a Bezelb. And can you guess what his first attack as Orb is? I bet that's exactly what everyone would do if they first became an Ultraman. And to all of the people I've met in my life that asked, why does an Ultraman just fire his beam at the start of the battle? Well, you've got your answer here. This shows us Guy has a lot to learn about fighting as an Ultra, so it's best to infer that the Origin Saga is about Guy learning to be a better Ultra, right? So that's why it's called Origin Saga, right? Well, sort of. Turns out we also have this whole planet canon thing going on. Some Dr. Psyche wants the Queen to surrender herself or give him some blood, or else he'll wreak planetary havoc with his Bezelbs. Canon's royal blood has the ability to transform into a deity called the War God, as the protector of the planet and its tree of life. It's interesting to be introduced to a whole new part of the galaxy. Not every world-ending conflict in the Ultra universe must involve the Ultras or the Earth. Well, whoops! And we have some humans who found something underwater. Generally, the plot is about Psyche wants to rid the world of conflict by infecting everyone with Kugutsu to erase their intelligence so that no one fights each other, except he himself is the exception, so he needs antidotes for this poison from Canon's Tree of Life, so he threatens Queen Amate. She then has to make a choice to give in to Psyche's demands or to try to avoid war by not turning into the War God in hopes of settling the conflict through non-violent means. And then Ultraman Orb comes into the picture to help out wherever he can. We'll talk about this even more later. The production quality of this short series is astounding. The suits and costumes for this show are well designed, especially the War God suit. It's super badass. They managed to sculpt a face that looks good enough that it doesn't look creepy, and not too similar to an Ultra's face as well. The torso and body decorations look regal enough that it manages to strike the line of not being too overly designed, and it still fits well given that she's a deity for the canon people. Queen Bezelb and the rest of the Bezelbs look menacing as well, and I like the choice to portray a sad face when she stands upright. Guy's outfit is awesome too. I'd give this show a perfect score for costume design, but then this decided to exist. Are those bananas? I wonder if they were thinking, we gotta design a charismatic villain against the War God and Queen Bezelb, and then the design team just ran out of juice. Just stick some bananas on his head. But hey, at the very least, this stupid design could make for a terrifyingly horrendous costume for Halloween or something. I got locked in my room for that. The set design ain't too shabby either. While it's clear that a lot of stuff is CGI, I think it's pretty acceptable since most of the show takes place in an alien environment and they're supposed to look weird. The music score of this show is a real treat. The track that plays during the brief recaps of the episode are some of the best things I've heard from an Ultra show. The musical cues for each returning Ultra were done just right. It's great how they incorporated all of these, and not just battle themes, but themes from their own show as well, such as the New Frontier theme, that pops up when Asuka has a moment, for instance. The absolute winners though are the two opening themes, Ultraman Orb and True Fighter, performed by Daisuke Asakura, Takeshi Tsuruno, and Future Boys respectively. I didn't really like the first opening theme when I first heard it, but it's actually a nice song. So let me say this about Origin Saga. It feels very different from the Ultra shows I'm used to watching. I believe this is because of the big change in setting, as it doesn't take place on Earth, but what sets it apart even further is them doing away with the regular Ultra series episode formula. You know the formula. Problem appears, monster is cause of problem, humans try something, doesn't work, Ultraman comes, spectacle, the whole 9 yards. The lack of this in Origin Saga makes it feel rather refreshing, and enhances the story since it's not burdened by the fact that it needs to have an Ultra battle in the end of the episode, but is flexible that it can be at any time. Now you may say that previous shows had done this before, where an Ultra shows up multiple times throughout an episode, but those ones still very much bank on an Ultra battle at the end for episode's climax. The only series I know that works like this would be Nexus. Not to mention Guy's simple transformation sequence, just a little thrust of the orb caliber to the sky, like what they used to be in the early eras. It helps him to fit in with the other early Heisei eras who make an appearance. But you know, I've been conditioned to anticipate this as the peak moment in an episode, so the moment when an Ultra transforms automatically makes it the highlight of the episode for me, while it's clear that the show writers wanted it to just be part of the story progression and not a game ender. Many people say that the show in general has an early Heisei feel to it all due to the writing quality, serious tone and directing, but personally I don't really see it. Instead, I think it has its own identity, feeling more like a movie production, and that's by no means a bad thing. For me, what truly makes a show enjoyable are its characters. While Ultraman Orb The Origin Saga has its good points, here's where I think the show kinda fell short of. The show stars Guy and Juggler, but we do have a lot of supporting characters. So we have the new guys, namely Queen Amate, Rika, Mikot, Shinra, this guy, and they make up the characters from canon. They're fine characters, they play the role they're supposed to play well, the story needs them, but it's not like they're super memorable. They do cool stuff, they have some badass fight scenes, but come on, when there's this going on, anyone would get showed up. Although I have a bit more to say about Amate, her conflict is that she doesn't want to solve the war with violence by turning into the war god to fight. It isn't a bad conflict, she's the ruler after all. No ruler would want their people to suffer. However, Psyche has already unleashed his forces, people are suffering already, you need to stop this fast, and that doesn't necessarily mean turning into the war god if you really don't want that. And personally, I've seen the whole don't wanna solve things before with violence so many times, so it just felt kinda basic in my opinion. And don't get me started on this weird subplot. Dr. Psyche, the ridiculous antagonist. In a series that tries to take itself very seriously, they just had to give most of the comedic moments to this guy. Apparently, he talks about not wanting any more conflict in the universe because his parents died as a kid, and his plan is to take away everyone's intelligence for this not to happen. The guy's got a plan that isn't half bad, but I just can't take him seriously. And why does Queen Berserk follow what this guy says? What the heck is Partel? Okay, maybe he invented Partel as a companion and visually shows us the scientist aspect of his character, but man is he annoying, especially when it says my friend. But the thing that just blows it is that this guy has no personal beef with any of our protagonists, and it just makes his actions feel hollow. There's no personal connection to each of them, they just fight him because he's an obstacle and he fights them because they're an obstacle, nothing more. He's just a plot catalyst. And I agree that they did try to make him even more meaningful with his supposedly nuanced backstory and motivations, but it just kinda fell flat for me.
I agree, my friend.
A huge selling point of this show was the return of early Heisei Ultras, Dyna, Cosmos, Gaia and Agul. Of course, it's such a joy seeing them again in action, and let me tell you, the preview of episode 3, which featured Dyna's return, was when I really started getting invested in the show. They brought back all the host actors as well and made them out as the experienced seniors to Orb. They even nailed their fighting styles too, something I really appreciate. But what I wish they would have done better though is if they had used these characters better in the story. Asuka and Dyna had a good start, he served to show the contrast and abilities of a rookie and a seasoned warrior, and even gave Orb some well needed advice and encouragement. fitting with his character and good use of him in the plot. But then Cosmos and Musashi come around and they were kinda alright. Musashi gives some good advice to Queen Amate. Gamu shows up in the second half of the show, showing off more of his crazy inventions. Fujimiya does too. This is Agul's first real appearance since Gaia again, and it's so awesome, of course. It's great that they had Gamu and Fujimiya appear in this series because reportedly Guy and Juggler's relationship was inspired by these two rivals. This homage is nice and helps show the character development as well. You can't deny the final battle scene with all of them is fantastic. The big gripe I have though is that they just stand around doing nothing most of the time. They occasionally drop some good lines, but they literally just stand around listening to the conversation going on. As fans of their shows, of course my eyes are automatically homed on the hosts, so it just becomes much more obvious that they don't do anything. At least have them at some place else if you're not gonna make them talk. Also, didn't Gamu say that the Earth was the one that told them to protect the Tree of Life? So, where are Gaia and Agul going here? Again, here are just a little bit of nitpicks, but it's okay overall. Juggler's Juggler is the deuteragonist, and in my opinion was one of the better handled characters in this show. We kinda jump straight to the part where he already dislikes Guy, but the reason we are made aware of. Guy got the power and he didn't. It's nice that he continues to support his friend despite his sadness, and that's his goal really, to help support Guy on his path to become a better Ultraman. And come on, everyone watching this was expecting to see why he was in Guy's opposition in present day and how he achieved his spiky demon form. There's two opinions I have about this. Firstly, this as Juggler reaching his breaking point with everything he's faced so far after just hiding his feelings ever since he was denied the Ultra power. Not that it happened just because Mikot died, but it's something of an escalation. Secondly, while the idea behind it is pretty good, the execution fell a bit flat because of how abrupt it is, and not to mention Juggler didn't reciprocate much companionship, so suddenly seeing him reach all out is weird. But you gotta take all of his previous grief into account for this moment to work, and the moment of Mikot's death just wasn't that good. And his actions of hastily felling the Tree of Life, thinking that would solve everything, is a big turning point in his character. From this point on, he doesn't just feel jealousy but starts to feel resentment, and resented by the people around him for using the power he gained in the way he did. Probably getting further distraught as he gets an earful from the Ultra Warriors he didn't get to be part of. And he still remembers this moment up until Ultraman Z. Then we have our main Ultra hero, Ultraman Orb, Gai Kurenai. He is sent on a mission after gaining the powers of Orb, and Juggler accompanies him despite obviously feeling distraught over the Voice of Light's rejection. Character arcs are important, especially for a prequel that looks like it aims to show us the beginning of their journey to become the characters they are in the series proper. Guy's character motivation here is to save people as a warrior of light, and to do this, he wants to use his powers for the benefit of others, but is quite unsure why he was chosen by the Voice of Light. I like how the series portrayed this in the first few episodes, with his incompetency at fighting at first, and his over-tendency to rely on beam attacks to defeat a monster. This aspect, however, was quickly brushed to the side because Guy gets the hang of it surprisingly fast. I mean, the other characters commented that he was holding back, but I would have preferred if they did show a more gradual growth and some proper learning from Dinah and Cosmos instead of just exchanging a few words of advice. But there's another aspect I felt was a bigger problem with his character. He's essentially an outsider to the whole ordeal, and as a result, nothing about the conflict feels personal to Guy. He's just there essentially since he was told to. For a show that names itself Origin Saga, I kinda expected the growth arc more personal to Guy and the way he makes his decisions, but instead Guy kinda suffers from being a main character who's kinda just there to be the determined good guy and Ultra that helps out. Maybe I am wrong though for expecting too much just from the series name, but it's like buying detergent just to get celery instead. His character suffers from the main story taking too much precedence, and that main story doesn't even involve him personally, and that brings me to the next point. I feel that the main plot is just too long-winded. The problem with this is the plot involves Guy and Juggler not as main actors. The ones who can move the plot are Amate and Psyche doesn't care much about Guy, he just sees him as another guy trying to stop him, it makes the character dynamics not very interesting, and when I rewatch this, I think I get another reason why this series bugged me. I personally think that if you replace Orb with any other Ultra or even any superpowered character, the story would still go on the same. It's a story that, to me, feels like it's just Ultraman in name, with the exception of Juggler's story because he specifically wants to be part of the Warriors of Light. It doesn't help that in the end all of this was just a mission for Guy. I was also excited at first to see how Orb would get his normal origin form, but it was quite the disappointment when Orb just kinda got it when it's done, just like a level up in a game or something. I think that for an origin story, it may have been better for the plot to revolve around something threatening his beliefs, and would truly show us how he develops those as an Ultraman. I am aware that there are 6 more chapters to his development, but I would have preferred for this first chapter to not have featured a plotline that is ultimately not very relevant to the chronicle as a whole, but it's just my opinion. Anyway, the show has some good themes, mainly the violence versus pacifism angle, but my takeaway about the themes actually comes in the form of the characters Juggler, Saiki and Fujimiya. This line in particular. Fujimiya back in Ultraman Gaia was a misguided individual who had hoped to protect the planet by eradicating humanity as he deemed it was not deserving to stand at the pinnacle of the species. He later learned that things can change. Here, Origin Saga presents us a grown Fujimiya who sees his past self in Juggler and Saiki. Saiki wants to stop conflict, but the way he plans to do it is batshit insane. Juggler wanted to stop the canon conflict, but did it by felling the Tree of Life, a big no-no for many folks on the planet. Essentially, the theme here is the surefire solution may not be the best, but in the end, no action can truly be deemed as the best course of action, which actually gives more nuance to Amate's difficult decision-making to surrender and to become the war god. She acknowledges this, and while people around her tell her to do stuff that would supposedly solve it immediately, she is reluctant because in the end, it's uncertain. But this brings me to the second major theme I took away from this show. You can't stay indecisive forever. This one is embodied by Amate and Guy. I might be reaching a bit with this one though, but Guy was very unsure of his abilities and kept on pondering the reason why he was chosen. Amate kept on hoping for a peaceful resolution and didn't want to turn into the war god. But it seemed like she was feeling a burden with that responsibility, evident during her conversation with Musashi. Their lack of strong spirit compared to those around them costed quite a lot. Overall, what do I think of this show? I don't think it's bad. In fact, I quite enjoyed it. The show having a compact 12-episode run benefited it a lot as well. Although there are several problems with it that prevented it from achieving true greatness, it was a rather nice change of pace. It's kinda like bird watching where you don't really get it unless you've been through it. And that was Ultraman Orb, the Origin Saga. So we might as well go and try finishing Ultraman Orb, the series proper right now. But first, since I finished and got Ultraman Orb, the Origin Saga, I'm gonna try out bird watching, see what it's all about. I think I get bird watching now.